So this is the guys over at Black Hills Project. Today we're gonna do a little video and conversation about do-all rifles and if that's a real thing, if there is a rifle that can do it all, or not. So I think we're gonna start out and just talk about a little bit of what we've used in the past, and that'll lead us kind of into what we're using now and if that is actually our do-all rifles or not. So what have you kind of used in the past for different setups?
So it's been a mess of a bunch of different things. I've used aim points, EOTechs, full power rifle scopes, medium power rifle scopes, a couple different kinds of LPVOs, ACOGs, basically everything. Red dot or like RMRs, closed emitters, just basically everything. It's been a
Between the two of us, we've kind of been able to try just about everything out there because we both have kind of used each other's stuff and like hey, you should try this so I can try it out type thing.
right, and it's been like over the years. It's been what, 5+ years since we started doing, or at least shooting together and everything, and at least
Yeah.
getting to know each other. It's not like we're some kind of, we don't have a ton of money on hand, so it's a lot of buying and selling and everything. And yeah, we've probably come to good conclusions in the past and have been content, but we're both the kind of people that need. I want to try as many different things as I possibly can until I'm finally content. So I've had to try everything. I've had to, like I said, red dots, EOTechs, LPVOs, different optics. I've tried pretty much everything, and to get where I am now with my current setup, can it be defined as a do-all rifle? I don't know. We're going to kind of talk about that, but we have tried everything. Just about
Yeah.
everything.
And that's with optics, barrel lengths,
Right.
laser setups for night vision, lights. Yeah, we're gonna
Even
just kind
as
of talk
small
about all
as,
of that.
yeah, even as small as triggers and
Yeah.
stocks and buffer weights and the kind of silencer you're using, or just the silencer or suppressor, whatever you want to call them. Those I've had a little bit less experience with. I've only tried a few different kinds of cans on my rifles and things like that. So I'm not the voice of that, but there are plenty of other. Pew Science, the Mr. Recce guy on Instagram, they are the ones you should probably go to for that kind of stuff. But just about everything else we've experienced and worked with and done enough with that we can give a good enough, at least our opinion, that you can go off of. Not necessarily go at like as gospel, but if to save you some time and money, at least consider what we are saying, because we're not these figures of authority, but we have tried just about everything.
Yeah,
And
we've put our pocketbook out there already. Like we've spent the money and gone through the pain. So we're trying to kind
spent
of
the
share
time
that.
testing it, and
Yep,
it's
yep.
not like we go out to the range into like a we do flat range, we've done long range, we've done, unfortunately, shitty lane shooting. I've had the experience with
Yeah.
that. Don't try it, just that's not fun. But
And
everything else we've
we
done.
use our stuff hard too. Like we take it out in weather, we take it out hiking with us, camping with us. Like it's not just, we use our stuff pretty hard too.
Right.
So
So
so I guess, do you want me to talk about what my setup is quick, and then you can talk about yours, and then we can kind of talk about why we have our stuff set up the way we do?
yeah, and at the end I want you to go over, and I'll do the same. I want you to go over like what your, not like 100% what your environment is. I don't want you to dox yourself or anything, but talk about why you chose what you did for your specific environment, and also just like kind of for fun, just what you wanted. There's an element of this looks cool and this is what I actually want versus what is maybe a little bit functionally better for me, but I just,
Right. Right.
your bias in it is like I want this. So
Right.
go into that at the end as well.
Yeah. So after going through a lot of different iterations of rifles, I've done 16-inch, 14.5, 10.5, and just 100 different optic setups and everything. Right now, what I'm running is an 11.5. I'll do the super cringe Garen thumb thing, and I'll go tip to butt. I've got a Dead Air Sandman S on the end with a flash hider. That's on an 11.5 Roscoe barrel. I've got I believe it's their 10.5 M rail. On top of that, I've got an AT PLC. Next to that, I'm running a Surefire Vampire light on an Arasaka mount. I've got a Uni tap switch up top, just some BCM rail panels and a BCM hand stop. And we'll throw up pictures of this as I talk too. But moving back, I am running a TA01 ACOG with a piggybacked RMR, and that has the kill flash and a QD mount on it. I'm running a HRF Industries Magwell. I'm running a just mil spec trigger right now. Raptor charging handle, BCM bolt carrier group, BCM pistol grip, law folder, and an SB tactical brace because ATF gay. My environment, basically, this is kind of, I'd almost call this like my ranch rifle. This is something I want to be able to like reach out to range with, but it's also going to like ride around on a four-wheeler with me, in the truck with me. It goes pretty much everywhere with me during the day and when I'm doing stuff out on our farm. So I needed it compact enough that it wasn't going to be super bulky, especially with the Canon, but I also needed it to, be decent out to say 500 yards. So um, that's kind of my setup. I don't know. Do you want to talk about yours, and then we can talk about the specific choices of why we chose what we chose?
Yeah. So mine is different in terms of environmental. I live more in an urban environment, city kind of thing. Not like a huge city, but I actually went with, and this is down to the preference as well, like what I think is cool. Is it perfect? I actually think so, yes. But I went with a 14.5. This is my only 5.56 rifle. It's a 14.5. It's actually a Daniel Defense upper. It's got the Block 2, the RIS 2 rail. It's the 14.5 SOCOM profile barrel. So that means it has a carbine buffer system for a 14.5, which is not great because your dwell time is so high with the 14.5 barrel. It works. It's actually the smoothest AR I've ever shot, in my opinion. But going forward, I am running, again, like we said, the Sandman S for a suppression, same flash hider. I'm running for my laser setup and my light setup, I'm running a Phantom Hill, the CTF2. That's with the Kiji, the B.E. Myers Kiji. It's a 3-degree arrowhead. I have the Malkov, the E2 HT, I believe is what it's called. That's like their throw head. I am super impressed with the system. It's really nice. I love the center bore laser. It makes zeroing super, super easy. You just zero it to 50 yards and then you can use 50-yard holds for it. It's very nice. Using LaRue Swift clips and rail panels for that as well. For my optics setup, I'm running a EOTech, the Voodoo 1-10 with the SR5 reticle. As far as 1-10s go, the Voodoo's really good. I think it's the best 1-10 from what I've read and experienced. It's very good. There's no distortion around the glass at 1 time or 10 times. It's in a Badger C1 with an offset T2. Also running the HRF Magwell, running a Geisley SSAE. After shooting a bunch of different triggers, I can say this is the best one I've shot so far. Running just a Ergo X grip and then a Magpul CTR stock. And then also a Raptor SD charging handle. That's nice for shooting suppressed. So environmental, for me, it's kind of funny. I live in more of an urban environment, whereas you live in more of farm ranch style environment, and I have the longer gun. My mentality with that is, you say that you bring yours everywhere. That's cool. I would probably get thrown in jail for no reason, but for carrying a full length rifle in my car,
frowned upon in your
the
society.
middle of the city. I carry every day. I carry everywhere. That is my truck gun. That's my bag gun. It's just the most inconspicuous for what I am personally doing in life, where I'm living in life. Therefore, my rifle is going to be longer because, believe it or not, you can actually take long shots in an urban environment. Not that I would stay here. If something happened, I'd get the fuck out of here. But for what I do on a day-to-day basis, I don't need a rifle gun or a bag gun or anything like that. I have my pistol that I carry, and yes, it's not as good as a rifle to put stuff down, but that is the trade-off for me. I would rather have higher velocity and a rifle that I can comfortably shoot out to 5, 6, 7, 800 yards with 77 grain 262 ammo. That's my philosophy on it. So
we should definitely have a little bit of ammo conversation when we get to that too. But so should we? I would say we should now just go both of our rifles. We'll go tip to butt again and just talk about why we chose what we chose for each thing.
Yeah.
So start with suppressors, and I mean, I'll be right up front. Basically, I have a Sandman S because I got an awesome deal on it. I think I think it's a good can. I think there is better stuff out there now, but I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend a Sandman to anyone. And I also do think suppressors are very important. I think there's a pretty big barrier there with the whole having to do a Form 4 or a Form 1 if you build one and go through that whole process and that wait. But if you can afford it and if you're willing to go through the kind of bullcrap process, I think it's an important tool.
It for sure sucks to have to wait a year, even after they said it wasn't going to take that long for the e-files. But is it worth it? It's worth it 100%. It is. It really sucks that you got to go through that process to buy one. It really does. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the country that we live in, and you're just going to have to do that unless you want to go about it in other means. But I mean, I'm obviously not going to condone that on a public video.
Right.
But it is 100% worth having it, literally just for the suppression of your flash. Yeah, being able to shoot without ears is nice. I still shoot with ears because I like being able to hear, and I want to be able to hear when I'm old. Doesn't necessarily affect you right now, but it will.
Yeah. And that's a big misconception too, is a lot of people still think it's like the movies, like, oh, you put a suppressor on, your gun's like silent.
It's 5.56. You still hear the crack. There's no subsonic 5.56.
Yeah, unless you're shooting like subsonic 300 blackout, it's still pretty loud. Like it's loud and it's quiet enough that your ears aren't going to be ringing for 2 days if you hop out of the tractor and take some shots. But it's not like dead silent. So
no, it's not even close. I mean, we were surprised. A buddy of ours was out shooting one day or one morning, and he was probably what would you say, like a quarter mile, half a mile away, and we could still hear him shooting. Yep. So I mean, it's not you're not going to reduce your sound signature to an extreme extent. It's for the flash suppression mainly, right. And I mean, it is for noise suppression, but it's mainly flash, and that's what they're best at.
Yeah, and so like something we're going to talk about throughout this, in any choice you make on your rifle to gain some advantages, you're probably going to sacrifice some things. So with a can, you're going to gain obviously flash suppression, noise suppression, but you're also adding length to your gun, and you're also adding weight to the end of your barrel.
Yep.
And you're also looking at impact shifts if you are taking your can on and off, which I mean, pretty much I only shoot suppress now, so that's not a huge deal, but and that kind of segues us into barrels, because getting a suppressor is what really pushed me into a shorter barrel, because I was running a 14.5 and that was great and wonderful. And 14.5 is a great barrel length, but for like throwing it in a truck or a tractor or a four-wheeler, as soon as I started putting that can on there, I mean, that was a long gun.
It's a long boy. Yep.
So for my specific use, going down to the 11.5, and I chronoed stuff, and I think it was only for the ammo I was shooting, I think it was only about a 200 or 300 FPS difference, which isn't nothing.
No, it's not an insignificant number.
Yeah, but it's low enough that I was willing to sacrifice it for the convenience of day-to-day use.
Right. And that's where I come back to with my use is I can't put it, I mean, I can, but I don't put it in my car. I don't have it next to me all the time. I don't ride around on four-wheelers with it, at least not as much as I would like. And it's just, I would rather have that extra 300 FPS for what I want to do. We're a little bit different in what we want to achieve. I want the highest precision and repeatability that I can possibly have out of a rifle if it's going to be my only one. That's why I chose the Voodoo with the specific reticle, with the SR5 reticle. So it's a first focal plane. It has the circle dot at 1 times, and it has a full Christmas tree mil dot reticle at 10 times. It's a first focal plane, so you have it throughout the entire length of your focal distance from 1 to 10. But when you get up to 10 times, it's really, really nice to have that. And say what you want about Daniel Defense. Yes, they're not the best in terms of their politics, but they probably have some of the best barrels you can buy, and their rails are pretty much second to none.
Yeah.
So it's an accurate rifle.
Let's talk about rails for a second, because obviously I'm running M-LOK and you're running a quad rail.
Yep.
For me, I mean, I really don't have a strong preference either way. Like, I kind of love both. I love a good quad rail, especially the Daniel Defense rails, but I love, a nice slim light M-LOK rail too. So I don't have a strong preference as long as you get something quality that's, especially if you're going to mount an IR laser on it, make sure something that's going to hold your zero. But
yeah, that's about the only thing I care about is there going to be any zero shift with a laser? I mean, again, I chose mine because I love the look of the Block 2 and the RIS 2 rail. That's literally the only reason I got this rail, this upper.
And I'd say that has to be probably pretty much the most bomb-proof rail on the market, I would have to say.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so obviously we're running pretty different laser and light setups as well. I've got the ATPLC with the Surefire Vampire. I definitely bought the ATPL before I I don't want to say before I knew better, but it's just not it's not a great laser for the price that you pay for it. And the IR illuminator on it's pretty trash, and that's why I have the Surefire Vampire on there with it, which again, we're talking about advantages and sacrifices. So being able to swap that light over to IR is awesome for night vision shooting, but the white light is definitely a little lackluster compared to like a mod light or even some of the Arasakas or Cloud or whatever. So, the advantages and sacrifices there. I do really love your laser and light setup if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I used to run a D-Ball i2 with just a mod light OKW. I miss the mod light on this rifle 100%, but the trade-off that you get is the CTF2 is, in my opinion, after running yours, my old D-Ball setup, and now this one, this is the most intuitive for the cost setup that you can have. So you lose, I lost the ability to put that mod light head on my rifle. But if you want to wait another month or two, Phantom Hill is actually coming out with the CTF3, which allows you to use 6-volt heads, which you can use the mod light heads on that, which is cool. Will I switch to that? No, I don't think I need that for this specific rifle. The cool thing about the Phantom Hill, though, the reason I bought it was because it's an all-enclosed system, meaning my white light, my IR illuminator, and my laser is in one specific unit, and the laser is center bore, meaning it's right over the barrel, about, I don't know, half inch, full inch maybe over the barrel. So all you got to do is 0 to 50 yards, and now you have your holds for 50 yards with the laser. So essentially 5,200 yard zero. So I can shoot it out to 200 yards, no problem with just the laser. And it's all enclosed. So I can use my white light, my IR illuminator, all that with one unit if I wanted to. I'm not really going to, but if I wanted to, I could just swap over the unit to a different upper, and then I'd have all that function on another upper without spending any more money. And I wouldn't necessarily, your zero might shift a little bit, but not enough where you'd be like, oh my God, this is unusable, right? So
yeah, I kind of, that center bore laser just makes too much sense. I was kind of like, why have we not been doing this for years? Like,
yeah, and the only reason is because of front sight blocks. You had to have them offset, but nobody really runs those anymore unless you want to be retro. So
right.
Retro
is cool.
It'd be nice to start having those front sight bases, or I'm sorry, the front laser, or the middle bore laser, because it just makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? Right? I
Yeah,
mean, the only
it's just
reason you would
easier
have
all
it is to
around.
get rid of like a front iron, but I actually run a front iron on mine and it does go over it. So there's no reason. I think the buttons are super, they're way clickier than anything that I've tried. I've tried the mod buttons, the Unity taps, the actual tape switch that comes with Mod Light, or I'm sorry, with the D-ball. I've tried the Surefire switches. Nothing comes close to the buttons on the Phantom Hill. So I
Yeah,
do
and
lose a little bit of functionality in terms of the light heads, but also those are going to be coming back in about a month or two with the third generation. So I mean, it's it's a pretty sweet setup. I've heard people say it's a really good beginner setup. I don't really think I'd even say that. I'd say it's a good like
yeah, I think it's a good
setup. I
setup.
wouldn't
Period.
I wouldn't like point it as at a beginner. I mean, I would because it's an awesome setup, but I genuinely think that it's not. It's just a good setup because the Kiji head. It's actually. I'll try and find, and if I can find it, I'll link it in the description. There's a video or an article where they compare the Maul because B.E. Myers makes the Maul and the Kiji, and the 3 degree Kiji was actually outperforming the Maul, and the Maul is a
Yeah,
$3,500 system. So this whole thing
yeah,
cost me 1,400 total. So
I was just gonna bring that up too. That I have not owned full power lasers or malls, but I have been around both of them, and I like the full power illuminator on the full power units is awesome. But like to me, the ergonomics of the Phantom Hill is I would almost prefer it to the mall personally. Like I wasn't a huge fan of the mall, but
yeah,
I didn't get to use it a whole lot either. So should we go back to optics?
yeah. Let's go to optics. We're running pretty pretty long here.
Yeah, we're going longer than we wanted already. But so I'm running, like I said earlier, an ACOG, 4X ACOG. I've like those are kind of a craze right now, but I've been running it for a while. Like we talked about at the beginning, we've both run twos, EOTechs. I've run both of those with magnifiers. I've run a couple different LPVOs. I've run 2 to 10s, and after trying all of that, the ACOG is the one that I'm holding on to. The main advantages that I really like about it are the durability. I mean, it's just about indestructible, and it's really light, which is nice. The reticle in it is adequate for shooting out to range. It's very simple, but it works, and it's the ACOG I have. The reticle is 455 grain with a 14.5 inch barrel, but it's close enough with the 11.5 that it's adequate. The caveat I would add to that is that I would not run it without some kind of top mounted red dot, whether it's an RMR or a T2 or whatever, just because it's not great up close. It's definitely not. It does have a tight eye box, which isn't an issue to me when you're shooting at range, but I definitely want that red dot for up close. Some of the things you're sacrificing with that ACOG is obviously higher magnification, something like what you're running, the 1 to 10, and also you're going to have a better reticle and you're going to be able to dial. So you're going to be a lot more precise with your setup than I can be. But again, for what I'm doing, the durability and the weight, the devices for me.
Yeah, and that's something to remember as well as weight. My rifle is not a light rifle,
Yeah, she
but it's
chunky.
not as heavy as one might think.
It's
It's
still very usable.
yes, it's very usable. It's definitely heavier than it has to be, but luckily the CTF2 actually drops a bunch of weight in the front because it's all enclosed. But in terms of my optics setup, the reason I went with this and not, I originally was going to go with the Night for 2.5 to 10, but I don't like second focal plane optics, and I think that they're, I mean, hot take, I think they're useless. I don't.
They're outdated.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'd say outdated or if they just don't really bring anything to the table, in my opinion. I get that, like, first focal planes, they have the reticles really small at the lowest location. I get that, but EOTech kind of has already proved that you can work around that with, because at one times they have the regular EOTech circle dot. It's a little bit larger than the red dot or the hollow one that they make, but it's still 100% usable at one times. I and the whole reason behind that is the Night Force 1.5 or 2.5 to 10 is second focal plane, and that turned me off from that pretty much immediately. And I knew that the quad rail was going to be super super heavy to begin with, and my second option with the Voodoo was going to be the Leupold Mark V. I think it's 3.8 to 18, and that was almost 10 ounces heavier than the Voodoo setup. So I went with the Voodoo. I'm happy with it. I think that yes, it's still a 1 to 10, so there's going to be drawbacks, but it's not as bad as like the Vortex 1 to 10, or God forbid like the Swamp Fox or something like that. It's the best 1 to 10 that you can buy, in my opinion. The reticle, the SR5 reticle is the only one that you should even consider. The SR4 is it's not a Christmas tree, so I don't care. And the LE5 is like it's not even a chevron, it's just like a crosshair, but it's like a thick crosshair circle dot thing. It doesn't make any sense to me why you'd buy that. Don't buy the LE5 or the SR4. Hold out. If they're out of stock, hold out for the SR5.
Yeah. If you're going to get a magnified optic, get a reticle that benefits you to use the magnification. That's my biggest pet peeve with LPVOs.
Yep. And that's again why I don't like second focal plane. It's just they're not useful. You have to guess on you either have to shoot so much with it that you have to guess on, or that you have to learn your holds, which is fine, but it's just like, why would you do that if you can just use first focal plane? You know what your mill drop is, just do that and you'll have first on hits every time. Second focal plane just doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. Yeah. I think it's useless, and that's my I think the only benefit to second focal plane, and the only reason they're used so widely in LPVOs, is because there's two reasons. There's the magnification of the reticle. It's really small if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing with first focal plane, and then also second focal plane has better illumination. That's a fact. That's like the only thing that I can think of that is the benefit of having a second focal plane. And there's only one optic that actually does daylight bright, if you want to call it that, and that's the Razor Gen 2. That's the only one that does it. EOTech, the Voodoo 1 to 10 is really close, but it's not there perfectly.
So what about the other half of your optic setup?
So the T2 on the side, on the offset, is I just had a T2 still from my 11.5 that I had built previously, and I really didn't want to get rid of it because I love the optic that much. And so I decided to go offset first. That's the only thing that I think that I'll change on this rifle, aside from a couple of like just parts that I want to interchange, and that's far and few between. But it's the only thing that I might change, because offset red dots don't work for passive aiming with night vision. It's not possible. If somebody says that it is, they're lying to you. It's not possible. At least not I don't even think there's an at least. It's not possible.
And that's something I forgot to mention with that top mounted red dot on the ACOG too, is it's such a nice height for passive aiming with the night vision.
Yeah, night vision passive aiming with the ACOG with at least the red dot on top is pretty awesome. Yeah. It's a really good setup.
And I found it was actually a lot easier through the ACOG than it has been with an LPVO or something too. But
I noticed that too. It's pretty good. I don't think I'd necessarily use it behind it, but it's an option, I guess. But I don't know how parallax would work with that.
Yeah, I would say mostly for observation, if anything.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, I have it's all in the Badger C1 mount. Excuse me. So I have it in their proprietary like offset J arm right now. I know that they make a 12 o'clock for it. I might go to that. I might not. I don't know yet. My opinion on night vision and passive versus laser aiming is changing basically so we can go into that on another video as well, or another talk. That is something that I have opinions on. But right now, I actually really, really like aiming with the offset. I think it's super nice and really fast, and I don't think that I'm going to change it anytime soon. Maybe the upcoming summer or so, I might just at least buy the stuff to try it on the 12 o'clock. But I think I'll probably keep it at the offset, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, you're gonna add a lot of bulk up top to move that up there. So it's again
especially with the T2.
advantages and sacrifices.
Yep.
So kind of moving back from there, I mean, bolt carriers are obviously important. Just get a quality bolt carrier.
Mhm.
A lot of like so I have a magwell, I have a bad lever. All that stuff's kind of like a personal preference thing, whether you how you like to do that. Triggers, you're running a precision trigger, I'm running a mil spec trigger.
Yep.
And again, that's we have similar purposes, but different uses in our builds.
Mm.
So like for me, I don't have a. I mean, I'd drop a Geisley in there if I had an extra laying around, but it hasn't ever been an issue to where I'm like, yeah, I need to get a Geisley in this, you know.
Yep.
Where with the 1 to 10, that's definitely more. I would say almost a need.
I think that as far as my experiences have gone, the difference of your personal accuracy when you're shooting a mil spec trigger versus something like a Geisley that the break is like a pound or 2 pounds, your accuracy 100% goes up. There's no
Oh yeah.
there's no doubt about that. I mean, you can cut your accuracy in half with a good trigger. Is it needed? No, but you can get really good with a mil spec trigger. I don't see a problem with them. I got a good deal on mine, so that's why I got it. Would I buy it full price? I mean, probably.
Yeah.
I think it's that good of a nut trigger.
Oh yeah.
But
And I do have one. I just have it in my 308 right now.
right.
But like I said, I mean, yeah, I think it's a great upgrade and a great tool.
Mm-hmm. But
Um,
I think the best upgrade, other than a light, is at least if you're going to be doing night vision, is that HRF Magwell. That thing is
that does it increases reload speeds
it's so
crazy.
nice. I can't say enough about one, the company, the guy that runs it's really cool, but also just the functionality of it. It's not too bulky that you look like some boomer
Yeah.
from the early 2000s, but it's also it serves its function and it serves it really really well. And I would probably put those on every single gun I own. The problem is they are expensive, but the price is worth it in my opinion. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I got to say about it. It's just a
They're
really really
great.
nice upgrade.
Yeah, and you can if you pay attention, you can grab them used for like 30-40 bucks, and it's 100% worth it.
Yeah, you got to pay attention though, because there's not many on the used
Yeah.
market because they're that good.
Yep. The only other kind of big thing is I'm running a law folder and you're not. I think it's a lot more beneficial on the shorter, but I don't use it a ton, but when I do use it, it's really nice to have. It does add a lot of weight on the gun, but I've had no like reliability issues, no wobble in it or anything like that. So I think it's a really quality piece of kit, and it does really come in handy for the few times that like if I'm like traveling somewhere and want to put the gun in a backpack, or want to shove it somewhere in the car and fold the stock over so it fits, just whatever. It does come in handy a lot. But
Yeah, I used to run one as well, and that's basically the exact way I would have phrased it. You don't really, I didn't use it that much, but when I did need it, it was awesome. And it's a no bullshit product. It works. It's not going to fail. Literally any other folder, I would not trust it.
yeah,
At
100%.
least for a direct impingement system. I
Yep.
don't use piston stuff, so I don't know anybody that makes any of those folders. So for a DI gun, law folder, if you want a folding stock, I think that's the only way to go. I don't think that
I
there's
agree.
any other option out there that's good.
I agree 100%.
But yeah,
So kind of like summarizing, do you think either of these rifles can do it all perfectly?
so I think you can get very close, but no, of course not. I mean, there's nothing that does everything perfectly, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
the kind of theme of the whole thing was like I've got this, but here's the reason why it's not as good, or it's here's why I got it, but here's what I lost because of getting it,
yeah.
right?
Just exactly what we've been saying the whole time. There's every piece of kit has an advantage, but it also comes with a disadvantage.
Yep. And you have to gauge what that is, right?
Yep.
So I
Well, and
picked a 14.5, but I also live in an urban environment. That's a huge thing. I want the velocity, but I also live in an urban environment. I I don't think it's a big deal if I'm being honest. I know my engagement distances and I would be just fine with a 14.5 and even a full length suppressor. But would it make it easier if I had a shorter upper? Yes. It would 100% make it easier. But that's my trade-off. So
Right. And I mean, ideally, you'd have 5 different rifles for 5 different situations, but like we're kind of balling on a budget here. So if you can only have one rifle, this is what we're working with.
yeah, if you
And
can only
it's
have one
important.
rifle, what's that?
Well, I'd say it's important to note too that like obviously our rifles are pretty different, and like for someone else, their rifle might be extremely different. I mean, they might have a 8.5-inch 300 blackout, or they might have a 20-inch SPR, but that might be the most quote unquote do all rifle for them. Like you have to remember that you need to build your rifle to your needs, and not just like copy whatever Instagram build is hot.
Yep. I mean, so and that's my whole thing is you can do it to an extent, right? You can copy whatever you want to an extent, but you also have to consider if you understand what you need, where you are, and then sprinkle a little bit of what I want, right? Just what looks cool.
Yeah.
That ends up being your quote unquote do all rifle. You have to understand that there are going to be things on the gun that you really, 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 really like, but there's going to be some things that you're just like, oh, I wish I could do this. But most likely, it's not going to work out that way. You can't just have everything.
Yeah.
The only barrel length that I think is like, yeah, it's close enough to being a dual barrel length is 12.5, but I mean, I haven't run a 12.5 because I don't one at the time that I was considering doing one, there weren't any like nice rails for it. That's a big thing for me. I do care what my stuff looks like, but also it's just I was looking over velocity charts, and the amount of velocity that you gain over an 11.5 is marginal, and that you
Mhm.
lose from a 12 or 14.5 is also marginal, but it's more than what you gain from an 11.5. So it's like it's basically either, in my opinion, do an 11.5 or do a 14.5 and
Yeah.
call it good. I mean, I don't think I would do a 12.5 to do a middle of the road, but that's about it.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you just don't get too wrapped up in, barrel lengths too much. Like just pay attention to velocities and understand what you need. And the biggest thing that's going to tell you that is go out and shoot your freaking gun. Like if you just build your gun and then like it sits on the wall, you're never going to know if that's a dual gun for you or not. Like
Exactly.
if you're not shooting it and being like, let's do like every time we go out and shoot together, we find something else. Like, oh man, yeah, I need to grab that HRF magwell because that's going to really help with my reloads. Or, oh man, like I I tried the 14.5 and 11.5 side by side. I'm getting a good enough performance out of 11.5 that I'm comfortable going to that. Or that like you got to use your stuff, or you're never going to really know what you need.
Right.
Um,
I mean, we don't live super close to each other, so we only shoot together at least, I don't know, every other month or so.
yeah,
But when we do, like you said, we sit down afterwards and we do a little gay little after action report, and we talk about what is it that I liked about this and what is it that I didn't like about it. And I can honestly, and I said this the last time we went back shooting about a week ago. I This is the first time that I had shot this rifle with you at your place, and I was so content with the gun that I had nothing to say.
yeah,
I couldn't think of anything that I wanted to change. Whereas every single time before that, I mean, and granted, every single time before that, I would come over and I'd have a different setup, completely different than the last one. So I had something to say and I had something to change, and so I bought and sold and everything. And then I tested it for 3-4 days, running it pretty hard, shooting a bunch of ammo, and then I had something to say about it. This time with this specific rifle, I didn't have anything to say about it other than this is it, you know.
right.
So
And yeah, and you got to remember too that like we're doing that with our skill set too. Like we're not you can't buy skill with better equipment. So
yeah,
equipment.
there's a curve. It
Yeah.
exponentially deteriorates, right?
Yep.
You can buy gear that is really good and will make you shoot better, but you won't get your full potential out of it.
Yeah.
Anyone that says gear or spending money doesn't buy skill is only partly wrong, or
Yeah.
partly right, because I will 100%, if you buy nice stuff, you will have an advantage. But if you don't train, and you don't learn the drawbacks and the advantages of that better gear, you're never going to get the full potential out of it, and you're never going to get your money's worth out of it. So, I mean, that's the whole takeaway with this. No, there's no such thing as a do-all gun. You can get really, really, really close, but it's all personal based, it's all situational based and environmentally based, and it's based on what you need and what you can afford and what you can put together yourself and all these different variables. So it's you can get really close. I think that's it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think I agree. There's no such thing as a dual rifle. There's always advantages and disadvantages, and you're always sacrificing something to gain something else, but you can build a rifle that's going to do well for your environment.
Yep.
And I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up if you don't have anything else.
No, that's it. I think that's all I got for that.
Yeah, so just let us know if this is something you guys are interested in, if you like listening to us talk, if you like this format. But yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up for today.
Yeah, and if you have anything else that you want to hear from us, I mean, like we've said in the beginning, we've done just about everything. So, and I am not at all claiming that we are some experts in everything, but we've done everything. Just about.
Yeah, we're just dudes that go out and use our stuff. So we've put a lot of hours on a lot of different things.
So if you ever need any help, just message the page, drop a comment down there, and we'll do our best to follow up with you. And that's about it. That's all I can think of. But we'll probably see you guys at the next one.
Check out Black Hills Project Instagram and YouTube, and we appreciate your guys' time.
Yep. Later.